Hi, I'm D.P. Conway, and over the next 12 days, I'm going to be reading my book, The 12 Days of Christmas. In the spirit of A Christmas Carol, I have written a compelling story that will inspire you at this and every Christmas. Barbara DeSanto is on top of the world in business and life. The people all around her, though, are suffering from her relentless drive to the top. Just before Christmas, a mysterious message begins to haunt her, telling her she must do something before it's too late. 12 Days is part of the Christmas collection. Dedications. For Marissa, thank you for helping me to keep Christmas well. Io ti amo sempre. For Patrick, keep leading the way. For my biggest fans, my children, Colleen, Bridget, Patrick, and Christopher. And for my littlest fans, my little Aubrey and my little Avery. And for Bruna. The story of the writing of 12 Days. Long ago, Charles Dickens looked about London, England, and realized that they were not keeping Christmas well. So he set out to write a story that might change things. A Christmas Carol was born, and it did change everything. It would be said later that Dickens was the man who invented Christmas. This past Christmas, I too looked around and noticed we were not keeping Christmas well. Endless commercials and ads, the frantic buying of gifts, the epic efforts to wrap everything, plan everything, order everything, bake everything, and it all had to be done, packaged, and delivered before Christmas Eve. And finally, when the day arrived, who could not feel the mad rush of people and families trying to fit it all in? To be here at this time and there at that time, to be everywhere and through it all, be too rushed to even think about Christmas. It would all go on in a tiny window from 4:30 p.m. on Christmas Eve until Christmas night. By then, most of us would collapse with exhaustion, unfulfilled and thrilled, not for Christmas, but that the madness of it all was finally finished. I said to myself, we are not keeping Christmas well. At the very same time, I had a boss who was less than kind. He was not a bad person in any regard, but he was mad most of the time. I thought to myself, I have an idea. And 12 Days was born. During this particular year, my wife and older son and I worked hard to keep Christmas well. We went to Mass each evening in beautiful churches so warmly decorated for Christmas. As I was writing this book, conscious of the phrase Dickens made famous, we often said, we are keeping Christmas well. I hope you enjoy this story, and I hope it will inspire you not only to keep Christmas well, but to also keep life well. God bless. Now, sit back and let me tell you a story. Chapter 1. Christmas is coming. Barbara DeSanto stood behind her desk, tapping the point of her pen loudly on the pile of papers in front of her. Her left eye was twitching, her signal she was about to blow. She was trying to shut it down, just like the counselor had told her. Take a deep breath, Barbara. Count to 10. Go up and go for a walk. Get up and go for a walk. Remember, anger rarely solves anything. Barbara ran through the litany slowly in her mind. It wasn't working, and she was teetering. She had seen the counselor twice now, because everything had been getting to her lately. Barbara decided to go because she had needed confirmation that everyone else was the problem. But the counselor had turned the tables. By the end of the second meeting, she had halfway convinced Barbara that she was the problem, that her anger was the problem. And Barbara had reluctantly agreed to give her way a try. But as she tapped her pen, she felt her blood beginning to boil. She had told him to be more careful, and she felt like she was talking to the wall. Right there, right on page 7, was a glaring mistake. Her eyes closed, and the twitching in her left eye continued. She said aloud to herself, I just had this conversation with him 3 weeks ago. She felt her teeth touch, gently at first, barely rubbing onto each other. But then she thought of his mistake again, and her teeth clenched down, and she exploded. She stormed out of her office and down the hall to the office of Jerry Tracek. Jerry was a junior associate in her advertising firm. He was much younger than Barbara, only 37 years old, of medium athletic build with silky dark brown hair. He had been with her for over 2 years now and was doing a very good job helping Barbara to bring new clients into the firm. "Jerry," she yelled as she approached the doorway and turned into his office, shaking the stack of papers in her hand. Barbara was dressed flawlessly today, wearing a black Chiara Bonnie jumpsuit and matching Prada leather pumps. The ultra-expensive outfit made her 57-year-old body look like she was in her late 30s. She stopped abruptly, throwing the stack of papers on the desk, demanding to know, "What is this?" Jerry looked up. His eyes narrowed as kindly as they could without revealing his anger. He hated when she stormed in like a mad woman. He looked down at the pile of papers. "It's the proposal for Vocan." Barbara exhaled loudly, brushed her neatly shaped neck-length hair behind her ear, and lowered her chin. She glared and shouted sternly, "This is garbage, Jerry. I need you to redo this today before you go home. Do you understand?" Barbara's dark brown Italian eyes glared at him, and her dark red clenched lips did nothing to soften the look. "What's wrong with it?" he asked in a surprised tone. "You can't see what's wrong with it? If you can't see what's wrong with it, maybe it's time for me to get someone else in that chair." Jerry swallowed. This was not the first time Barbara had threatened him. She was a hard woman to work for. Not one of the 9 people who worked in her company liked her. Still, she paid them well, and despite her critical, demeaning approach, she was right fairly often, which made her firm successful. "I will look at it, but what exactly needs to be fixed?" She stepped closer to the desk and leaned forward with a manufactured half smile. "Jerry, I'll give you a hint. Go get the proposal I did for Smart Business and read it." "Okay," he replied quickly. Barbara wheeled around and stormed back out without saying a word. Jerry looked up at the time. It was already 1:30 on the day before Christmas Eve. He was running out of time. He had promised his wife Nina he would pick her up at 4:30 to go shopping at the mall. There was no way he would make it now. He grabbed his phone from his desk drawer and texted her. "Hey honey, I'm sorry. The Wicked Witch of the North just flew in and I may have to work late. I'll text you when I get out, but it might be late." Jerry set his phone down, exasperated. He was getting tired of Barbara's antics, storming in unannounced with an angry tone, wagging her finger as if he were a child, glaring at him for no reason. These were but a few of her antics. He had hoped she might change, especially after some of the new clients he helped bring in. But now it seemed that nothing would ever change her. He turned his attention to the computer screen to quickly check his email before going to the file room. His phone beeped. It was Nina. He sighed and opened her text. "Why do you have to stay so late? Did you forget? After shopping, we were supposed to see my mom at the nursing home. Now we probably won't have time." He hastily texted back. "We'll fit it in, I promise." A text came back almost immediately. "Jerry, the babysitter can't stay that long." Jerry shook his head, slammed down his phone, cursing under his breath. Barbara did not need the work done today. The proposal was not due for 2 more weeks. She was just being a jerk. He got up and went to the file room to get the Smart Business proposal and figure out what she wanted. In her office on the 17th floor of the Eaton Center on Superior Avenue in Cleveland, Barbara had a view of the entire roof and grounds of St. John's Cathedral. It was located in the heart of downtown, right next door to her office. The sight of the old cathedral brought back memories of the old days. Her grandmother used to go to 5 p.m. Mass there every day. She worked as a counter waitress at Bouquer's Soda and Grill in the Hanna Building. Every day after work, rain or shine, she would make the 15-minute walk to the cathedral and afterwards take the bus to their home on Franklin Avenue, usually arriving before 6 p.m. Barbara often wondered what possessed her grandmother to go to such lengths to attend church. Growing up, Barbara's parents had been fairly diligent about going on Sundays, but certainly not every day, like her grandmother. Barbara never liked going at all, and once she went away to college, she stopped going altogether. In her mind, she was making an important generational step upward toward more modern thinking. Going to Mass was something the old folks did in the old days, which were long since gone. Barbara's two daughters went nearly every week, and Barbara did not understand why, as she certainly had not raised them to do so. She could only assume it was because of their husbands, neither of whom she felt were the cream of the crop in the enlightened thinking department. Today was a particularly cloudy day, typical of Cleveland, but that was not what was troubling her. The words, "before it's too late," wouldn't stop echoing in her mind. She had no idea where they came from. She scanned the downtown skyline beyond the cathedral for another moment, then turned back to face her desk. She had lots to do, including a dinner meeting with a prospect at 7 p.m. at the Hofbrauhaus restaurant. She was looking forward to the German dishes she rarely got to enjoy. Steve Garrity of Loctite Corp had an advertising budget of several $1,000,000 a year. Barbara was sure she could do a better job than his current advertising agency was doing. She imagined the account would easily be worth hundreds of thousands in billing a year. It was why she went to the trouble of having Martha, her personal assistant, buy her a new outfit with matching shoes and a matching purse 2 days earlier. She wanted to look perfect, and by the look she had gotten walking into the building this morning, she had accomplished her goal. The office phone rang. "Yes," Barbara said, hitting the intercom button and turning away from the view out the 17th floor window to face her desk. Kathy, her longtime secretary, announced, "I have Steve Garrity on the line." Barbara sighed. Was he calling to cancel? No matter, she would face it head on like she did everything. Her father had taught her that long ago, to face her problems head on, without hesitation. He had also taught her to go and take what she wanted in life, because no one was going to hand it to her. She glared at the intercom for a moment, gathering her resolve, then smiled and picked up the phone. "Hello, this is Barbara." "Barbara, it's Steve Garrity. How are you today?" "I'm good, Steve. I'm looking forward to our dinner tonight." "Yes, I am too. Are you ready for Christmas?" Barbara rolled her eyes. She had no time for Christmas. She smiled, though, and replied, "Yes, as ready as I will ever be. But enough about Christmas. What can I do for you, Steve?" "I've gone over your proposal." "And?" Barbara said playfully, ready for the boom to drop, her mind already racing how she would counter it. "And I love it. It's the most creative approach we've ever had presented to us. I wanted you to know I'm signing it right now." "Oh, that's great, Steve. I'm excited about the campaign." "Me too. We can start getting into some of the nuances tonight at dinner." "Great. I'll see you at 7. "Excellent, Barbara. See you then." Barbara hung up and gritted her teeth, thrusting her fist into the air. "Yes, I did it!" She had been on a roll lately. Her firm, the Barbara DeSanto Company, had already doubled in size during the past 2 years. Still, she needed to get the final report from her lackluster accounting department, but she was already fairly certain she had made over $1,000,000 in profit this year. She turned to look out the window beyond the cathedral at the nearby downtown skyline. For some reason, she thought again of her grandmother, slaving away at the counter of the tiny restaurant. She had worked there for years, making barely enough money to help put food on the table. "Grandma," Barbara said aloud to herself, "you would be very, very proud of me." Just then her cell phone rang. She looked down. It was her oldest daughter, Laura. She slid the bar to answer. "Yes, Laura?" "Mom, I got your message earlier, but we can't make it by 6 tomorrow." "And why not?" Barbara replied with her brow deeply furrowed. "Because John wants to take the kids to church." Barbara's eyes narrowed further. "Laura, we're on a tight schedule tomorrow night. Leave church early or go to church another time." "We will leave early, Mom. I already told John we have to, but you know it gets crowded on Christmas Eve. It may take forever to get out of the parking lot." "Listen to me carefully. I spent a lot of money on this dinner and the gifts for you and the grandchildren. You guys do whatever you have to do, but dinner's at 6 and I expect you to be there." There was a pause. "Okay, what are we having again?" Laura asked, trying to deflect her mom's curtness. "We are having lobster bisque soup, London broil, and lobster tail. I also have Martha picking up chicken fingers and fries for the children at 5:30. Martha was Barbara's personal assistant and had been doing a myriad of things for her for over a year now. Mom, I will try. Hey, why don't you have one of us pick up the chicken? This way Martha can get home to her family for Christmas Eve. No, Barbara replied without hesitation. It's already arranged, and that's what I pay her for. Again, there was silence. Okay, Laura replied. Oh, Mom, Uncle Steve called. His son Tom is in the hospital. With what? He said it's some kind of blood disease. Barbara commented, he probably has AIDS. There was silence again. Laura said meekly, I thought you would want to know. Barbara replied instantly, I'm too busy for that right now, Laura. Tom has made poor choices, and now he's paying for them. Laura awkwardly replied, Okay, Mom, we'll see you tomorrow. Barbara reminded her once more, don't be late, then hung up. The rest of the afternoon passed quickly. The rest of the afternoon passed very slowly, and heavy gray clouds moved into the downtown skyline. Something was agitating Barbara, but she could not put her finger on it. It was as if there was some urgency for her to do something, though she did not know what. The feeling kept coming up, and she kept being drawn to look out at the sky over the cathedral. At 4 p.m., she dialed Jerry's office. Jerry, what is happening? What do you mean? The proposal, she said in a stern tone. I'm working on it, he snapped. I want it done before you leave. Do you understand? Yes, I understand. She hung up, shaking her head. Sometimes she wished she could just do everything herself. It would save her a great deal of aggravation. Then she thought of her counselor, and for a brief moment she felt guilty. Her left eye began twitching, and she closed her eyes tightly, thinking and trying to stop her nervous habit. No, she is wrong. Getting mad is my way of getting things done. If people would do what they're supposed to do in the first place, I would not have to blow up at them. No, I'm done with counseling. I've given it a try and it's not for me. She wheeled around and returned to looking out the window, feeling good about her decision. All around the cathedral, people were beginning to trickle into the various entrances for the 5 p.m. service. Barbara had tried to go once some 10 years earlier, but there was a homeless man who sat in the pew right behind her. To this day, Barbara still remembered the stench around him. She wondered why the church let people like that just walk in. It certainly was not good marketing. Her office phone rang, jolting her out of her thoughts. Barbara hit the intercom button. Yes? Stan from accounting wants to meet with you. Tell him we'll have to wait till after Christmas. I'm busy and I have a meeting tonight. All right, replied her secretary. Barbara hung up and smiled. She already knew what Stan wanted, and she was in no hurry to hand out bonuses, not at least until her year-end numbers were solidified. She had learned this from her father. For most of her childhood, her father had been a failure in business. It caused terrible arguments between her parents, often leaving the 4 children cowering in their rooms, listening to the litany of complaints her mother threw at him. They were hard years, years of sorrow, years of anger, years of going without. Barbara always listened carefully to both sides, and she felt her mother was right about a lot of things. His customers and his employees were taking advantage of him. Finally, though, her father started a successful plumbing supply store. He somehow learned how to deal with his employees, especially the ungrateful ones. The arguments faded away, and the family began to take pride in their father and his business. Barbara loved his stories of keeping his employees in line by yelling at them, or even firing them to make examples of them. She respected his ways and had made them her own. Had her siblings followed his advice, perhaps they would not be so poor. A moment later, the phone rang. Barbara slammed her finger on the intercom. What is it? She asked in an indignant tone, the one she used when she wanted to intimidate her secretary. It's Stan again. He said it cannot wait. Barbara's eyes vaulted to the ceiling as she shook her head. She closed her eyes, trying to calm the anger she felt welling up within her. She had disliked Stan and his work for at least 6 months now. After the year-end books were closed, she would contemplate getting rid of him. She shouted back at the intercom, I'll decide if it can wait. Her secretary did not reply. Barbara slammed her finger on the intercom button, disconnecting it. She glared out the window, then slammed her finger down again, reactivating the intercom. Tell him to come in now, and tell him it better be good. A few minutes later, Stan, a balding middle-aged accountant, whose rounded stomach perfectly complemented the rounded bald crown on his head, walked in. What is it, Stan? She snapped in an authoritative tone. I have the healthcare numbers. There's a large increase. Now, 2 days before Christmas? How much of an increase? Let's see here. Stan pushed his glasses higher up his nose and fumbled some papers, squinting. It says 35%. 35 what? She shouted, jumping out of her chair. Stan raised his eyes, then furrowed his brow, staring back down at the numbers as if looking at them again would somehow soften their impact. Barbara slammed her fist on the desk, demanding, When did you learn about this? Last week when I was out on quarantine with COVID. And you didn't think to call me? I was in bed much of the week. I worked as much as I could. I had to push this off because you had me busy with other projects. I was supposed to address it Monday, but you blew up about the gas bill, and that tied me up the entire day. Why is it going up? She demanded. The agent told me because of Jennifer's cancer diagnosis. Barbara gritted her teeth. Do I have to pay for everyone's personal problems? She wheeled around to look out the window, feeling the strange urgency again, then asked, How much is this going to cost a person who has the family plan? $6,000 more per year, but the employee has to pay most of that. We only play the employee part. Stan, in case you didn't remember, I pay all of it for my family. So, it is costing me $6,000 more personally. She grimaced, throwing her hand in the air, then demanded, What is the cost increase to the company? It will cost the company $1,800 more per month. It's not too bad. He held his breath, waiting for the outburst. Barbara exclaimed defiantly, That is over $20,000 a year, Stan, plus $6,000 for me. That's $26,000 out of my pocket. Do you have $26,000 to throw around, Stan? Stan looked up and said firmly, We're a growing company, Barbara. We have to expect things like this. She raised her finger. You listen to me. You have to find another policy for us. If it was your $26,000, you'd be all over this. Or you know what? The hell with it. I'll just cancel the insurance. Let everyone get their own insurance. Barbara, you can't just, she interrupted. I can do whatever I want, Stan. Stan felt stuck by her comment. He fumbled his thoughts for a moment, then said, Well, but Barbara, you need to offer insurance to attract talent. Barbara did not reply. She didn't need the talent she had attracted, starting with Stan. Oh, I suppose that's true, she said, her voice trailing, pretending what he said mattered. She then snapped, But I don't care right now. Find a cheaper plan or I will discontinue insurance in the new year. Stan turned to leave, then paused. What about the Christmas bonuses? You gave them before Christmas last year. Barbara hated looking at the hungry ingrate before her. She was paying him more than enough money as it was. She smiled cynically. Unless you can find a way out of that healthcare disaster, I don't think I have money to pay bonuses, Stan. Stan lowered his glance, turned, and quietly left. At 6:30 p.m., Barbara glanced up at the clock. She walked down the hall to Jerry Tracek's office. His light was out. He better have done what I asked. She went back to her office, told her secretary she could leave, and left for her dinner meeting with Steve Garrity. She rode the elevator alone, then walked through the lobby, waving to the security guard, then walked out the front door of the Eaton Center. The homeless woman, who hung out nearly every evening, was there, leaning against the back wall of the cathedral, near the dark driveway that ran between the cathedral and the Eaton Center. Though the woman's presence always subtly annoyed Barbara, once in a while she would give her some change if she had any, as long as she was not pressed for time. The woman called out in her usual crackling chant in the old, cold, crisp air, "Can you help me?" Barbara reached in her coat pocket. Nothing. She said, "I'm sorry, I don't have any change." Barbara turned away, then stopped. It's cold, and it's almost Christmas, she thought. She glanced at her watch. She had a minute to spare. She pulled up her purse and opened her pocketbook. She rummaged through the 20s and 10s and 5s until she finally reached some 1s. Thank God, she said to herself. She took out $2, closed her purse, and walked over. The woman looked like a real mess tonight. And for the first time, Barbara, too, realized she might be about the same age as her. Barbara handed her $2 and said, "Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas," the woman said. Barbara didn't wait for a reply, but turned and began walking away. "Merry Christmas," the woman said, adding in an ominous tone, "before it's too late." Barbara stopped and quickly turned around, glaring. "What did you say?" "I said Merry Christmas." Barbara walked back up to her with a scowl on her face, asking sternly, "You said something after that. What was it?" The woman cowered and said in her creaky voice, "I heard a woman say something, but it wasn't me." "What did you hear? What woman?" Barbara demanded, cautiously glancing into the shadows. "I heard a woman say before it's too late. It sounded like she was right behind me. I looked, but she turned. No one was there." "Where is she?" Barbara said, frightened now, looking around in the darkness of the late December evening. The woman shrugged. "I told you I didn't see her." Barbara turned away and started walking as quickly as she could up 12th Street toward the Hofbrauhaus restaurant. Suddenly she stopped. She remembered. It was a dream a week or so earlier. A woman's voice had spoken those words, no, chided her with those words. She had forgotten. Now she shuddered and quickly turned around to make sure no one was following her. She picked up the pace and kept going. It felt more desolate tonight than any other time she could remember. No one was around as she headed along the sidewalk, overshadowed by a long, darkened downtown store that had already closed. The crisp, cold air created a silence that yielded only to the sound of the pounding of her heels as they echoed against the concrete buildings of the empty street like a loud drumbeat. She suddenly wished she had not walked tonight. A street lamp ahead was out, and it unnerved her. She shuddered as she passed through the dark spot, and she forced herself to keep going. Something rattled not far behind her, and she turned abruptly, looking back. Nothing. She then turned again and quickened her pace. Finally, she reached the corner and turned onto the adjoining street. She sighed with relief, trying to slow her quickened breath. The street was well lit, and the Hofbrauhaus was now in sight. When she finally arrived at the restaurant, she was short of breath and took a moment outside the door to collect herself. The voice, the dark walk, it had all really spooked her. She opened the door and stepped into the warmly lit, noisy entranceway, searching over the heads of the waiting patrons until she spotted Steve. She waved, and Steve cut through the crowd to reach her. "Hello, Barbara. Glad you could make it. Our table's ready." "Oh, wonderful. I'm famished. It was a brisk walk over here." "You walked?" "Yes, I usually do. However, tonight I wish I had driven." "Well, I'll drive you back after dinner." "Thank you," she said, greatly relieved. The dinner was tense. She could not completely relax. She was occupied not only by what had been said near the church, but also by the foreboding sense of urgency she had felt all day. After dinner, Steve dropped her at the entrance of the parking garage at Eaton Center. She walked up the cold concrete ramp and went to her car. It felt just as desolate as the walk to the restaurant, and she could not put her finger on why. She started her car quickly and immediately locked her doors. She drove out as fast as she could, through the downtown streets just as quickly, until finally she reached the highway. She exhaled loudly. As she drove past lamppost after lamppost along the highway, she began to think. Then she began to worry. She knew the dream and the voice from the darkness were connected. So was the sense of urgency she had felt all day. They were all connected. Too late for what?